There are moments when the heart suddenly grows quiet, moments that remind us how deeply we feel even when we don't say a word. We've all tasted disappointment. We gave with sincerity, but received less than we hoped. We waited for understanding, but met silence instead. And yes, it hurts, but this pain carries wisdom. It gently reminds us that the heart was never meant to rest on people. Its true rest is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one who never leaves us waiting. Disappointment isn't a flaw in us. It's clarity, a reminder that Allah shows us the reality we couldn't see on our own. Pain doesn't come to break us. It comes to wake us. It pulls the heart toward reflection, toward patience, toward trust. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught us that strength isn't found in hiding our emotions. Strength is found in turning them toward Allah. With honesty, with humility, with hope, people change. Circumstances shift. Life moves in directions we never planned. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala remains constant. And when the heart leans on Him, even heavy moments begin to soften. If your heart has ever felt alone, remember this. Allah was closest to you in that moment. He saw your quiet struggle. He heard what you couldn't express. He was guiding you through every silence. This is where healing begins, with awareness, with softness, with the certainty that Allah never allows a heart to break without preparing it to rise again clearer, calmer, and closer to Him. There comes a moment after disappointment when the heart begins to see not with the eyes but with a deeper awareness. The veil slowly lifts and a person realizes that every emotion they felt had a reason. Nothing was random. Nothing was wasted. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was teaching even through the ache. Sometimes the first thing we notice is how quickly expectations rise. We give with sincerity and naturally expect sincerity in return. We show loyalty and hope for loyalty back. But not every heart carries the same depth. Not every soul understands the weight of trust, and not every person knows how to hold what we offer with care. This realization is painful but necessary. When you begin to understand this, the heart softens. It stops demanding perfection from people who are imperfect by nature. It stops expecting emotional clarity from those who are still confused within themselves. And slowly, gently, you begin to breathe again. You start to see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows disappointment to protect you from attaching too tightly to what cannot support you. He redirects the heart so it doesn't break in deeper ways later. What felt like rejection was sometimes protection. What felt like loss was often a shift towards something better aligned with your soul. This is where emotional maturity begins. You learn that not every relationship needs the same level of access. Some people are meant for closeness. Others are meant for distance, and some are meant only as brief stops in our journey. This isn't harshness. This is wisdom. This is balance. This is the clarity that comes when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala expands your understanding. In this chapter of the heart's journey, you begin noticing patterns. You see who gives and who only takes. You see who listens and who simply waits to speak. You see who stands by you and who stands near you only when it benefits them. These observations aren't meant to harden you. They are meant to guide your kindness. They help you place people where they belong with fairness, without illusion. And with each new layer of clarity, the heart becomes lighter. You stop trying to force people into roles they were never meant to play. You stop taking every change personally. You stop measuring your worth through the behavior of others. Your value comes from Allah, not from someone's temporary attention. It is in these quiet understandings that healing begins. Not loudly, not suddenly, but gently like dawn after a long night. You begin to trust that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows what your heart needs even when you struggle to understand it yourself. And slowly, you learn to walk with a new kind of awareness, soft, balanced, grounded in faith, because the heart that sees clearly is not the heart that never hurts. It is the heart that learns, adjusts, and rises with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guiding every step. There comes a point in every emotional journey when the heart begins to ask itself honest questions. Not to judge, but to understand. When disappointment strikes, the mind often goes quiet, but the heart becomes loud. And in that loudness, the believer begins to see what was once hidden. You start noticing how easily we raise our expectations. How naturally we assume that others feel what we feel or think as deeply as we think. Yet every person carries a different story. Some hearts are trained by life to be cautious, others are shaped by love to be open, and some simply don't know how to meet the depth you offer. Not because they are bad, but because they haven't grown in the same way. This realization can sting at first, but it also brings a new kind of clarity. You begin to understand that disappointment is not always about someone hurting you. Sometimes it's about discovering the limits of their emotional capacity. And once you understand someone's capacity, you stop expecting from them what they cannot give. This is where the believer must practice gentleness with themselves. You may look back and wonder, why didn't I see the signs? Why did I give so much? Why did I trust so deeply? But the truth is simple. You gave because you are sincere. You trusted because your heart is clean, and you hoped because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created you with compassion, not suspicion. The heart needs kindness at this stage. It needs reassurance, not blame. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught us that the believer is gentle even with their own soul. He warned us that harshness with the self creates spiritual exhaustion. So let your heart breathe. Let it understand without punishment. Let it reflect without tearing itself apart. Reflection is not about digging for mistakes. It's about noticing patterns. For example, you may recall moments where you gave more time than you had simply to keep the relationship balanced. You may think about situations where you stayed silent to maintain peace, or times when you carried emotional weight that should never have been yours. These realizations are not meant to break you. They are meant to teach you where your boundaries were too soft and where your heart was too open. And with every realization, the heart matures. It learns balance. It learns awareness. It learns that not everyone deserves the same level of access. You begin to see that people come into your life for different reasons. Some to support you, some to teach you, some to test you, and some simply to remind you that only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can be your true refuge. When this understanding settles gently inside your chest, something beautiful happens. Your heart becomes calmer. Your expectations become wiser, and your trust begins shifting from people to the one who never disappoints. This is growth. This is clarity. This is the beginning of emotional strength rooted in faith. There comes a stage when the shock of disappointment begins to fade, and what remains is a slow, steady sadness. It is not the kind of sadness that overwhelms you all at once. It is quieter than that. It settles gently into the heart, reminding you of what mattered and why it hurt in the first place. This sadness is not weakness. It is simply the heart processing a reality it did not expect. When trust breaks, something inside us needs time to understand what changed. You begin to recognize that the pain is not only about the person. It is also about the version of yourself you were around them, the hopes you carried, the meaning you attached, the sincerity you offered. Losing that feels like losing a part of your inner world. At this stage, the believer often turns inward. You start revisiting memories, not to hold on to them, but to understand them. You recall the moments when their words comforted you and the moments when their silence confused you. You think about the kindness you offered and the times you stayed quiet to keep peace. These reflections can be difficult, but they are necessary. They help you see the full picture without illusion. This is also the stage where the heart easily slips into self-doubt. You may ask yourself, was I too open? Did I care too much? Did I expect too much? But pause here. These questions are part of healing, not a sign that you did something wrong. You cared because your heart is alive. You opened up because sincerity is part of your nature. You hoped because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created human beings to desire connection. The believer must remember sadness is not a punishment. It is a cleansing, a way for the heart to release what it can no longer carry. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam cried for loss. He felt grief, he felt hurt, and he taught us that expressing emotion does not weaken faith. It strengthens it because it brings the heart back to Allah with honesty and humility. During this time, your heart may feel heavier than usual. You might speak less, think more, or prefer silence over conversation. That's all right. Healing requires space. The heart needs room to breathe, room to release, room to reorganize its emotions. This sadness is part of that reorganization. It is the heart discovering what truly matters and what is better left behind. As you move through this phase, you begin to notice something subtle. The sadness becomes softer, it changes shape, it stops pulling you down and starts teaching you gently. You realize that the things you lost were not meant to stay. You understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala removed what your heart could not release on its own. And you begin to trust that this sadness is temporary, but its lesson is lasting. Eventually, the heart recognizes a powerful truth. You did not break, you grew, you did not fail, you learned, you did not lose, you were guided, and slowly as this wisdom settles within, the sadness begins to turn into clarity. And clarity becomes the next step toward healing. There comes a moment in healing when the heart begins to look inward, gently, honestly, without fear. This moment is important. It is the point where sadness starts giving way to understanding. You begin to realize that the event that hurt you is now behind you, but its lesson is still unfolding inside you. At first, this reflection feels heavy. You find yourself revisiting past choices, wondering where things shifted. You think about the conversations you held on to, the hopes